Okay, so we have our dry fly hook in the vise, the size 14 Daiichi standard dry fly hook, and we've wrapped, in this case, 70 denier brown thread from just behind the hook eye back to the bend of the hook. All right, are we all there? Okay, so the first thing we want to tie in is actually our tail. So you should have some piece of a Coq de Leon feather. And what we want to do here is, now if you don't have Coq de Leon feather or want to buy Coq de Leon feather, again, the standard Adams, parachute Adams is just Grizzly hackle and, yes, Grizzly hackle and brown hackle mixed together. But now if you have hackle with the fuzzies on the bottom, we don't want to grab any of those fuzzies, so you can strip those off if you like. But we want to pull down about, it's kind of like, you just take your best guess, but about 1/4 inch, if I'm pulling it out straight, of hackle fibers. So something along the order, if I could get it there. Okay, something about like that. So just a little around a hook gap width of feathers is a good measure if you want to measure that. And if you pull them straight out to the side, you can see that it aligns the tips. So, and I'm pointing it to the left, so I don't have to swap hands with it. Because if I were pointing to the right and had to swap hands, invariably I mess them up. So I grab that and pull them from the stem and just hold it just like that. And it's not critical, the amount that you pull off, just, you know, quarter inch stack or so. Okay, how we doing? Now I'm going to transfer this to my right hand, but I want to be very careful not to disturb the alignment of my feathers. Now, this is the tail length of a parachute Adams is one of those gumbo recipe items. Some people like short tails, some people like long tails. I think one that is about the length of the hook shank is about right. So I'm going to line my tips up at the bend of the hook, and then I'm going to grab it. Let me get my scissors here. I'm going to grab it with my fingers here, and then transfer that with my left hand back to my tie-in point, and that'll give me that hook shaft length. So there, grab it right in front of that point, and then bring it right above my thread. And I'm holding it pinched right there. And I'm gonna give my thread a little counterclockwise twist so it won't jump forward on me. And I'm using a pinch wrap, so I'm pinching the feathers, bringing the thread between my fingers. I'm bringing between my thumb and forefinger on the near side, then coming down between my thumb and forefinger on the far side, and then doing it one more time. Now, if the feathers have a tendency to spin on you, don't put as much tension on the thread. If they want to spin around the hook, hang on to them and just make a couple of loose wraps before you try any tension. And then you should have something that looks kind of like that. See, as I put tension on it, it wants to pull it around the hook. Now we could tie and cut here, but I like to make the body kind of even. So I'm going to wrap this not all the way to the front of my thread, but probably to about there. So I'm going to hold it again with my fingers. And again, you don't have to make tight wraps. So I'm going to wrap it to about there and then cut off my excess feather. How's the tail tie-in going? Okay, good.
So you start at the back and go forward.
Start the back and go forward, yes. Now, what we're going to do, that's a good question, Lindsay, because now we're going to go back to the back again.
I went the wrong way. Just leave it like that.
No, you're good right here. I'll tell you what, let's tie the post in next. I think it'd be easier for us to tie the post in next. And this is the fun part. All right, I can't see the back. Orlando, Cindy, Christie, y'all good? Ronnie, good back there? Okay,
Probably as good as I'll be on, right?
gotcha. So all we can hope for. Cut about a 2-inch piece. It's not critical of your post material. About a 2-inch piece.
No, it's just all.
And so we have our 2-inch piece. Now, I'd like for you to watch me go through it first, because we kind of have to go through the whole thing, and it's going to be a little difficult if you're trying to follow along. So I'm going to, I have about 1.5 inches of thread here. I'm going to loop that post material around my thread. And this is kind of like we do laser dubs sometimes. And I'm going to bring it up, and I'm going to attach it right at the front of my thread, right where I marked the head. Now, and then I'm going to make, you see it wants to slide around, which is okay. I'm going to make, 4, 5, 10 or 12 wraps in front, and then a few wraps behind. And notice when I'm wrapping behind, I'm having to grab, release, and then a couple more in front. Now that secures my post to the top. That was the easy part. Now, there are a couple of ways to, and I'm going to zoom out like this so you can see a little bit better. The challenge here is wrapping while you're holding this post, because obviously one hand gets in the way of the other. So what people do is they'll come around, grab it, come around, grab it. But what happens to me is that. See, just like that. So what I do is, and this is kind of a little finger gymnastics here, but I will hold the post between my thumb and forefinger, and then I'll take my middle finger, and as I reach around, I need a couple of inches of thread. I will hold that thread with that finger, so I never let go of the post. And then I can work my way up the post, and you want sort of touching wraps if you can. I'm not doing a great job here. Let me go back down and get some touching wraps at the bottom. And so I am just going around the post, holding it and grabbing it with my finger. This is by far the easiest way I've found. Every other method I've used, I have.
Zoom back in right there so we can see.
Okay.
Everything is on top of the.
How tight are you wrapping it?
You can wrap it pretty tight because you're holding the post material, so it's not going to slip out
So
on you.
you're wrapping the post at the bottom, working your way up.
Yep. Oh, let me zoom in for you here.
There you go. Okay.
Yep. So I'm going up
It doesn't fall.
about that far. I'm hanging on to it, so that's why I'm holding on to it at the top. So I go up some distance, and that's probably about 1/8 of an inch, maybe a little more, and then I go back down with it. But the key is never letting go and holding that thread with that middle finger as you go down. And then once you get back down to the base, you can let go of the post, and you have a nice post there. Now, again, you'll see videos where people are grabbing it like this, but see, look, even with the post already tied, it wants to really jump around on you. So again, I'm just holding the post, thumb and forefinger, reaching around, grabbing the thread with my middle finger and wrapping it around. Doesn't matter if you drop it. Wrapping it around the post. And we're going to use that same method when we tie our feathers in later as well. Okay, I do not like that little white spot right there.
You start at the very bottom of the
Start at the very bottom, yes. And when you finish this process, leave your thread behind the post. And we don't want to trim the post yet either. So don't trim the post. That's the very last thing we'll do. How are the finger gymnastics going?
Yeah. Oh, kind of funny.
You make sure you have about 2 inches of thread or so out, 2 or 2.5 inches out. So you'll have enough to grab with your finger. Now, if you like just holding, wrapping, that works fine too. There's no wrong way to do this as long as it gets wrapped. But more thread. Get you a little more thread out. Uh-oh, broke it.
Yep, snapped it. Using 70, I ought to be using 140.
We're going to trim it down.
I know, but running the thread up, you know, you're gonna set your post up above the bottom pad.
Well, that's a good question, because another thing about the recipe of this is how much hackle do you like? How many winds of hackle do you like? If you only want, I like about 4 or 5 on this because they float better in fast water. You could go up to about here with it if you wanted to.
When you wrap the hackle around the brown part of the post,
Mhm.
I mean, they don't all do that. Don't always tie the post directly to the top.
I'm not sure, the post is tied to the hook. You talking about the hackle?
I know, but the part that we just lay on the brown part, you're gonna have one hackle up there.
Yeah, we're going to run hackle down it actually. Yeah, that's going to give us our surf. But yeah, every method I've ever seen does the wrap like that.
Does it?
Yeah. Now I think you could do it without the wrap if you like the way I'm holding this. If you held your feathers and the post and did that, but otherwise it'd be pretty flimsy because that gives us a lot of stiffness to wrap the hackle around. Okay.
So what's the height of the post you thinking?
I've got about 1/8 of an inch, I think. Looks to be almost a hook gap, but not quite.
Did you return your thread to the bottom?
Yes, I leave it hanging behind the post. And we're actually going to return the thread to just above the hook point.
Wrap it back down.
Back down to just, leave it hanging just above the hook point. Yeah, wrap back down on the post. And when you get back down to the hook, wrap back to the hook point.
So an eighth of an inch, right?
Yeah, roughly. Yeah. Yep. Now what we're going to do is we're going to dub the body up to the post. Next step's dub the body up to the post. Then we'll tie our feathers in. Then we'll dub the front, wrap the feathers in off.
Okay, when we get to the bottom of the post, what do we do?
Take your thread, wrap your thread back to roughly above the hook point.
Above your hook.
What dubbing technique do you recommend?
Just
The
regular touch dubbing. Yeah. No, it's not. I told Cindy that today. I said, this is not the,
All the time to show up.
I warned her, yeah. But if you can do this, you can tie anything. Just about. Yeah. All right. Let's start. We're going to dub the body, and we want, so with the thread hanging roughly above the hook point, pull out, about 2.5, 3 inches of thread. And we're going to use just regular touch dubbing technique, which means we just twist the dubbing onto the thread. And if you've not done it, when you put the dubbing on the thread, you only twist it and rub it in one direction. So if I do it clockwise because I'm right-handed, you would not want to do this because that would just wind and unwind it. So you want to make sure you're winding in one direction. So get a really thin, wispy piece and just up under the hook.
About how much do we get?
This is more.
This is a very wispy thin piece here, Rick, just kind of, that's one thing that takes some practice. It's kind of, if in doubt, when you're in doubt, like Jim said, use less.
Okay, and how do you know when you have it properly wrapped?
All right. Like I say, I have mine just lay it on the thread right now. I'm going to start at the top and it should form a really nice, tight, thin noodle like that. I'm just rolling it between my thumb and forefinger.
Do you washing your favorite?
I don't, no. You can, but I don't. If you have dubbing wax, you can also touch the dubbing wax as well. I see I've made a little thin, pretty level dubbing noodle. Now, I'm going to grab my next little thin piece of dubbing, and I'm going to go about halfway down and put some more on. Further down, go about halfway down, because we want to make a tapered noodle. And this is called a dubbing noodle for obvious reasons. And we want it bigger at the bottom than at the top, because we want the body of our fly tapered from small at the rear to large at the
About how
front.
many inches down?
Well, right now I'm only about 1.25 inches, but I'm still thickening this bottom part down here. All right, see now that bottom part's getting a little thicker, and now I'll go down. I'm probably going to build about 1.5 inches total, 1.75 inches. We can always add some if we run, if it's too short.
So we stop when we hit the post.
Do what?
We stop when we hit the post.
Yes, if you go ahead and wrap in your dubbing, yes, stop at the post.
Okay.
All right, now I've got about 1.5 inches here. And what I'm going to do is, we left our thread at the hook point. I'm going to wrap to the rear until I start my dubbing right in front of the tail, right there. Let me go ahead and zoom back in. So start right in front of the tail and just make touching wraps of dubbing all the way up. You can overlap a little bit. You want a nice little taper. Something like that.
Are you wrapping it tight?
Yeah, pretty tight. I mean, you don't have to put a lot of tension on it, but you do want to wrap it snug. And you can pinch it a little bit if you want to smooth things out. And I've actually got a little thread showing, so I should have started that a little, just a hair farther back. And now the image on the TV is compressed left and right. It's longer in real life than it looks up there.
Oh, That's right, you repeat the question the same like that. Dry hackle and wet cutting. Yeah, I answer yes.
What is that, Jim?
Rick, wanna know what the difference between dry fly does? Wet fly does.
Dry fly, I think, is just usually finer. I mean, it's synthetic. Neither one of them absorb water, but it's a real, because you can see the body, the screen's really magnifying the fuzziness of it, but it's really a fairly smooth body back and forth there. Makes a tight, small body. All right, so now that we're here, let's take our thread to the front, just behind the hook eye. Actually, wrap my dubbing a little too far forward there.
All the way to eye?
Just right, leave it hanging just behind the hook eye. So our next step is to tie the feathers in. And this is at least as much fun as tying in the post. All right, so I'm gonna zoom out a little bit here so we can look at the feather. And when you look at this hackle feather, now those of you on Zoom, I've already cut yours in half for you. But these full feathers, you'll notice they're fairly narrow at the top. They have a wider piece here and then a much narrower piece all the way down. I want us to cut ours right here. Now, this entire feather can be used to tie dry flies, but this middle part's a little bit large for a 14. Up here is just fine, and below this is just fine. This is probably about a 12 size there. So I'm going to cut this feather just below that wide section. Now, hang on to that piece. I mean, because these dry fly feathers are about $1.25 each, so you don't want to leave any waste out there.
How long?
Just cut it right. We're not going to cut it to length. Just cut it right below that wide webby part. Yep. Right up. No, just below it. Jeff.
Oh, okay.
Yep, just below the wide webby part. Yeah, here's my grizzly. You can see that it's really webby here, and I'm going to cut it just at the bottom of that webby section.
We use brown feather.
We're using brown and grizzly.
So the other one gets cut too.
Yes, so cut your brown and your grizzly.
So if our brown one's already wide compared to our grizzly, should we just match up the?
No, I wouldn't worry about that. I would cut that one right there. You got pretty wide.
Yes, what I mean, yeah.
Yeah, let me get you another one. Here, this is much narrower.
That looks pretty wide.
Where's the
Here.
Where it gets.
Oh, no, I didn't know that. Jim, we ran out of brown.
Mike, I found one.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's that one.
About how long of a piece do we want to end up?
You're the chicken and you fry.
Whatever, it's gonna be different from whatever.
That's the part I want to cut off. Keep this part at the bottom.
Yeah.
Right, we're using the box.
Yep, save the top. We're going to use our leftovers. Now, next step is at the base of the feather, we want to strip off, about 3/8 of an inch or so. It's better to strip a little too much than not enough. Because when we tie this feather in, we're going to tie it in beginning here. And you need to see this piece once you get your feather cut. We're going to tie it in beginning behind the hook eye. We're going to tie it along the shaft up the post. And we need to make sure that we have bare stem above the post, because that first wrap, we want bare stem to wrap. That way it helps the feather lay down. So make sure that when you just kind of eyeball it, when you strip your feather, make sure you have enough bare stem, and that's kind of hard to see there, enough bare stem to reach up.
So that's what, a quarter inch or more?
Yeah, quarter, maybe a little bit more even. And do the same thing, roughly the same on both feathers. Now, once you get it stripped, once you get both of them stripped, or about a quarter of an inch or so. I'll get mine down here off camera. The brown one's a little easier to see. So once I have, that's really plenty there. Plenty of bare stem, maybe a little bit too much. What I want to do here is once I get it stripped, kind of bring the fibers out a little bit and grab the ones off the top. Now, notice there are two sides to your feather. There's a shiny side and a dull side. With the with the dull side toward your hook, see I've got a dull side and a shiny side. With the dull side toward the hook, grab the top few fibers and strip a few more off the top like that. And what that's going to do is we start to wrap that feather, that's going to help it stay in place.
You want the curvature facing you.
Yes. Did I say shiny side toward, what did I say? Shiny
Shiny
side,
side toward the hook.
shiny side toward the hook. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Which cups them out.
Shiny, is that what I said? Shiny side toward the hook?
No, you said the dull side.
I'm sorry. Shiny side is toward the hook. You got plenty of feather. So, okay. After I said that, I said,
Which
oops.
one's shiny, which one's dull?
On that brown one,
Dark or light? The light.
Do what?
Yeah, dark and a light.
Okay, the dark would be the shiniest, I think.
That's facing down.
And shiny goes.
So dark and light. Yeah, and when you look at the Grizzly, it is shiny and dull, but the brown is dark and light.
So the dark side toward the hook
Yes.
of the brown. That's facing down.
And we're doing the brown first.
The light is.
Mike, you need to give me Bob.
Facing down.
Okay, now,
You, Bob, and you are just on a break.
now the little top strip is not critical, so it's fine. All right, now,
You gonna do both these at the same time or do? them
yeah, we're gonna do
separate?
it both at the same time.
Oh,
White side there.
All right, so we got a brown with the dark side, put the brown with the dark side towards you, hold your feather like I'm doing here. Let me zoom out a little bit.
Or side toward the hook. Dark side toward
Oh, no, but we're holding it. We're not tying yet.
the hook. Okay.
We're not tying yet. We're just holding it with the dark side toward us.
Okay.
And then on your Grizzly hackle, one side is dull and one side is shiny. The shiny side or the more colorful side towards you, and we try to line those two. Try to line those two up with those tips roughly aligned. So you should hold your feathers flat against each other, color or shiny side towards you with the tips roughly aligned. And then give your bobbin a counterclockwise twist so your thread will jump to the rear and make a light loop around the hook shank and the feathers.
Rolling the feathers on the backside.
No, they should stay pretty close to the front. Mine kind of roll to the top, but that's okay. Just don't let them roll to the back. And give it a second loose wrap. Now, very little tension on the thread. And then I'm going to pull back. Notice that my stem is sticking out in front. There's no way I could trim that. So I'm going to pull that back just slightly until it's right at the back of the eye. Now, if you pull it too far, it'll just slip out from under your thread and just give it a couple more wraps. Now, once you have it pulled back where you don't have any stem sticking out, go ahead and give it a few tight wraps all the way back to the post. I'm holding my post out of the way so I can give it some tight wraps all the way back to the post. Because we don't want these feathers to come out, because they will come out. I know. I've gotten up the post and they've come out at the bottom. And make sure your thread is snugged right up against the front of your post there. Pull your feathers straight up, trying to keep that dark side and that shiny side of the grizzly towards you. And we're going to use the same technique here we use to wrap our post. I'm going to grab feathers, post and all, making sure I have about 2 inches of thread out. And I'm going to wrap up the post. And they don't have to be touching wraps. They can be spaced out a bit.
Are we putting that with the white stuff we did before?
Yep, everything's tied together all the way up. So I'm going all the way up to the top and then coming back down.
Same way we did before with.
Same way we did before, yep. Except this time I'm tying the post and the feathers together. So it's like this.
Buy cheaters for a reason.
I know.
Don't bring them.
I was gonna give you an 18 hook, Jim. to work with.
Wow.
Give you a 10.
That's a bigger hook, isn't
Yeah, it's a bigger number.
it?
And you go back down.
Then go back down. And again, the wraps don't have to be touching like they were with the post. Just get down with it. And that secures your hackle fiber. And when you finish, leave your thread hanging behind the post. Towards the hook bend from the post, on the back side of the post.
How far up? Oh,
Go up to the top of your thread wraps and then come back down. Your previous thread wraps from when you tied the post in, Orlando, just go up to the top of those and then come back down.
She said you needed
All right, when you get back down to the bottom, say again.
When you get back down to the bottom, leave your thread hanging behind the post. Yeah, you can buy these for about $1.50 each.
No way.
Yeah, but it's the satisfaction. It's the satisfaction.
Yeah.
I got one that's in the water. There ain't a tree on it.
That's right. Yeah, you will. You're right. Now, so our next step is again, as much fun as this has been so far, because we're going to wrap both of these feathers at the same time. We're going to wrap them around the hackle, no, around the post rather. Coming down. We're going to wrap them back down. Now, there's two methods here. The feathers have a slight curve to them, and I can't do it in front on the video, but the dull side or the dark side of the feather or the light side of the feather is the concave side. The feathers are bent. Let me zoom out a little bit. The feather fibers are concave on that dull side. So that's the reason we tied that dull side close to the feather toward the post, because when I pull it down with that dull side up, that means my feathers are going to be curved up. If they were curved down, each wrap would have a tendency to wrap on top of the fibers, because if they were curved down, you had to do the wrap, you'd be on top of those fibers.
The dark side up.
The dark side should be towards you.
So then you get longer down.
Yep. And so what we're going to do now is I'm going to bend them down just slightly to get a little kink. I'm going to hold my post, get the fibers out of the way. I'm going to bend them down to get a little kink in it. Kind of kink the feather, just kind of pull it down. Don't pull it too hard or you'll break it and then have to start over. So kink it down a little bit like that. Now, what I'm going to do here, I could wrap here, but if I do this, I have a tendency, and I could do it on this fly. I'm just wrapping like that, but I find it much, much easier. And I've seen this on the internet. Some other people do this, is I'm going to move my fly and my vise to where I'm going to tip it down to where my post is sticking out horizontally from my vise. Like this. Now notice I don't have it totally horizontal because it would have a tendency to slip off that way. My thread would slip off. So this just makes it easier for me anyway to wrap the feathers. So I'm going to take my feathers, hold them both together. And you can't put a lot of tension or to pull your post. See, it pulled mine and flipped. All right, all right. I may have to hold it, so you just have to kind of work with it.
Does it matter which way you're wrapping it?
I'm wrapping over the top, but no, it does not matter, Rich. Rick, oops.
Is you got down your post?
Yep, I'm wrapping down the post. You want to try to keep your feathers together. Mine are wanting to separate a little bit here on me. And if they kind of start messing up, just unwrap and start over again.
You're wrapping towards the.
Wrapping towards the hook, yes.
So once you get down to the bottom of the post, what do you do? Keep going?
I'm going to show you right here. Now, it's totally up to you on how many wraps. Like I said earlier, I like my dry flies to have fairly thick hackle. That way they float better in the water, in fast water. So I think I have 4 wraps on mine. Now, so it'll be even on both sides. We don't want to stop with our feathers up. We want to come down on the other side and hold it down instead of up like you would think. So I've got my thread hanging here and I've got my hackle my hackle in my fingers. And now we're going to take 2 or 3 wraps around that post and hackle. So I need to bring my feathers, my hackle outside of my thread to the inside. So when I take a wrap, and you want to push your thread. See, I'm pushing my thread toward the inside to keep it under the hackle and bring it just over the back of the fly and then push it back again. Come down, bring it just over the front of the fly. And you're going to trap a few no matter what. So I'm trying not to trap those. Go down around the front. And just let it hang in the back. Like that.
The whole time you were saying that, I'm looking at this, so I couldn't see what you were doing, but
Well,
I was trying not to let, so, all right, so I got this up like here.
yeah,
try to
just
tie it
take a
down.
couple of wraps around the post and the feather to tie it down.
You tie it on both
Do you
sides.
tie it to the hook as well, hook shank?
No, I'm tying it to the post.
Only to the hook.
Only the
okay.
post. What's that, Roger?
When you tie in the wraps to the hook, you tie it in behind the post and then you run the post
Yeah, you're tying to the post.
in both sides of the post.
Yeah, you're wrapping all the way around the post.
Around the hook too?
No. What? Let me zoom in a little bit here so you can see my wraps a little better. Okay, so I'm pushing I don't have much thread out, so I'm pushing my thread under the hackle. I'm wrapping only around the post. I don't want to, and then I'm coming up and over and kind of snugging it against the body so I can get around that hackle behind, coming and then bring it. I'm always above the hook, wrapping only around the post. Always above the hook, like that. And then you can trim your excess hackle off.
Doesn't go down the body, it just goes up.
Does not go down the body, that's right. We're tying only to the post at this
So
point.
once you get it around the post, that's what you do.
2 or 3 times I'll leave it hanging on the backside right now and then trim, make sure you put a little tension on it, but then trim the end of your feathers off.
We're left with the little fuzzy thing sticking out.
Yeah, and you can see I've got a few little fuzzies down here too, because believe me, it's better to leave a few fibers on those feathers than to cut your thread at this point. You can see I've got a few little fuzzies down under here, and that's fine. Fish don't care. And at this point, straighten your fly back in your vise. Now, this is probably a little more hackle than I need, but it's better to have too much than not enough, I think. I could probably use one less wrap than that. That's a little thick. What was that, Rich?
I was gonna say that.
I knew you were. I beat you to it. I could tell you were about to say it. But you know what? I forgot a step here. I got so excited about wrapping the hackle. We didn't dub in front of the post, did we?
Can we do that last?
We can recover that.
We can recover that. That's a recoverable error. That is a recoverable error. So with,
Proper planning.
yeah, and the reason, what we'll do there then, because at this point, if I had done this correctly, we would have dubbed after we tied the feather in, we would have dubbed in front of the post. And then we would have wrapped our feathers. But again, I got so excited about wrapping the feathers, I didn't dub in front of the post. So what we'll do, at this point, we can hold those feathers back and dub that in the front. And if we get a few feathers trapped, it's no big deal. So we take a little bit of our dubbing, let's put our thread in front of the post. And we'll take just the tiniest bit of dubbing. I mean, just a little wisp. Wrap around the hook. Now, actually, some people do tie it in this order, but I don't. So I'm kind of making up for my mistake here. I'm kind of making an excuse for my mistake. All right, so we'll hold that feather back and let's dub right against the front of the post. And then bring the thread right behind the eye. Oh, I have tied about 3 dozen of these in my life, and this is the ugliest one I've tied. So this is a special one for y'all tonight.
I tied one, I think that's it. I gotta wait till you see mine.
Do what, Rick?
Wait till you see mine.
All right. So now, what some people do when we had our fly vertical in the vise, some people actually we just wrapped around the hackle. You'll look on the internet, and some people actually whip finish there and finish the fly right there. But it is very difficult to maneuver your whip finish tool and not capture a bunch of that hackle. So I find it easier just to bring it back to the hook eye. And if you want to half hitch here, you can half hitch. If you want to whip finish here, you can whip finish. I'm going to whip finish. So I'm going to give it just a few turns on my whip finish tool here. 1, 2, 3. Thank goodness. There we go. And there is, we have one thing left to do here. And I can tell you, with this much hackle, this fly is going to float like a cork.
I did flip that.
Now, go ahead and tie it off. And the last thing we're going to do is trim our post.
Now do we cut it off?
Cut the thread off, yes. Once you whip finish or half hitch, your choice. Go ahead and cut your thread, and don't cut the post yet, because I have a word of warning about the post. Again, voice of experience here.
What are you saying we're supposed to do now?
Oh, just sit tight for a second.
Okay.
We're gonna cut the post here as soon as everybody whip finishes.
This would not be good PTSD treatment.
Actually, it takes a lot longer to talk through this than it does to actually time. So
Yes.
it's
Well, you got questions?
yeah, Flagler's is, but his probably looks a little better than mine too. He gets paid a lot more money. Chris has already tied a dozen down there. I've seen him take them out of the vise and fill his box with them. So he's. All right, so let's trim our post. Now, invariably, I do, you probably won't, but invariably I trim the post too short and it looks terrible. So again, it's better to trim it too long than too short. And we all know the reason why. So what I like to look at roughly the height from the hook to the top of my hackle. and go about that same distance up and trim the post there. So give the post a twist to cord it up, and then go roughly that distance. And when you cut it, the post flares out and shortens up quite a bit. And if it's too long, like if that one's too long for you, just trim it down a little bit. And I'm gonna fish with this one this week. Now, I know Robert's gonna put his on the mantle in a shadow box.
But you can have short on the front.
And that's Parachute Adams. Now, again, mine, if I were to critique this one, I would say my hackle is not quite wide enough and it's a little bit too tall. Probably should be about right there.
But wide mean wingspan or?
Yeah, the wingspan, this hackle, even though it's a 14, graded a 14, this really looks like 16 size hackle to me.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
it is more.
Yeah, it's a little, to my eyes, a little narrow from here to here. But it's fine. It'll fish just fine. All right. We'll go out to the, all right, I can't. Let's see. Good. Unstable. All right.
No.
She's right there. Shows these little. And tying these, but it's a lot. Tie though. They're 15 minutes per fly for me anyway. Once you get going, but if you get everything. So. All right. Any questions, y'all? That's
Hey, Bill.
gymnastics. My middle,
Hey, Bill.
that middle finger.
Hey, Bill.
Tom, did you tie with us tonight or watch?
Yeah, I did, but I had to use calf tail to make my post.
Oh, did you? Nice. Yeah, calf tail and calf hair is actually the original posting fiber on these. When I tied some of these back in the late 90s and quickly quit and started buying them, I tried to tie them with calf body hair. Oh, yeah, nice. Looks good. Looks good. Peter, did you get materials or no?
Yeah, they came in today
Oh, wow, okay.
and it's a work in progress, but I'm glad I got to do it.
I understand. Yeah, I think a lot of it's about proportions as much as it's about technique, I think. Just kind of getting those right.
Yeah, great class. Thank you.
Very good. Yes, enjoyed.
Chris, did you tie tonight? Nice. Got two of them there. Good deal. Good deal. All right, y'all, that's about all I have. And here as well. Appreciate y'all joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill.
All right, indeed. Now, Chris, you're fishing this week in the marsh, I hear?
Yeah, I've got 4 days in the marsh scheduled. My cousin's flying in. He's never caught a redfish before, so that's going to be the goal.
Well, I hope he's done as good as fishing with you, because if he's fishing with me, he might leave having never caught a redfish. So,
This is try 2 for him. We'll see.
yep. All right. Good night, y'all.
Good night. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Good night.
Flip.
And watch.
Yes. Good night. Good night.